Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is another Design Cuts live weekly workshop, and I'm thrilled to welcome back our very good friend, Mr. Hank Washington. How are you, Hank?
I'm good. I'm good. It's so good to be back and seeing everyone. Hope everyone is doing great on this beautiful April.
As I said, it's great to have you back. We missed you, Hank. We always love when you
I
come hang
know.
live with us.
I miss you all too. It's been too long.
100%. And what are you going to be sharing with them today?
Absolutely. So today I'm actually going to be working with the Pastel Pro brush pack, and we're obviously going to be drawing some of my favorite things to make, and that is the fuzzy. So we are creating kind of a different technique with this one today, where we're going to utilize pastel versus kind of texture brushes that we in watercolors that we've done before in the past few sessions. So this is going to be a little bit more loose, but a lot more fun.
Mhm.
I know I've seen in the comments a few people are just getting Procreate or just getting used to new brushes. So I think this will be a um, great little section here that we can kind of explore some looseness and really have some fun and really utilize color in a digital way. So I'm excited.
Love it. I'm excited too. And if you do not own the Pastel pack, you can check it out just below this video if you want to grab it and follow along. It's a very cool pack, and you're about to see it in action. Hank, take it away, man.
Yeah, man. So it's definitely a new technique for me, and I think it's something I think I explored like very early on. But like I said, today we're just gonna focus on kind of this theme of summer, right? I'm a huge fan of the summer. It's slowly warming up here in the U.S. I think I see someone in chat that said they were from Alabama, so I'm pretty sure they're getting kind of the same type of feeling. Whereas we're kind of on the edge of spring and a little bit of some cold days here and there, but we're obviously knocking on that door of summer. So I'm a huge fan of the summer treats, like keeping things like nice and cool. So yeah, we're gonna kind of use that as our theme and concept to push forward this idea today. So what I did, just for the sake of time, I went ahead and filled in some of these shapes, as you can see. I'm gonna showcase the sketch here, but we obviously have a fuzzy just enjoying a really nice popsicle, obviously just to stay cool and also look cool doing it with that. But utilizing these brushes, I went ahead and just filled in some of the shapes just so we can kind of get into the really fun part, which is my personal favorite of getting some of these colors and textures pulled together. Um, so again, like I'm working with the Pastel Pro Pack, which is amazing, but we're going to focus on two specific brushes today, and that's the Particle Edge Pro dense brush and also the essential round brush pastels. Those have really nice buildups that allows like for hard strokes and also slowly like merging those. So we'll be back and forth a little bit on those. Um, so without further ado, we actually go ahead and start getting into it. Now, usually drawing these characters, I try to keep them as simple as possible. Probably won't be the case with this one here, so it's a little bit more advanced than what I'm usually doing. But ideally, I love to start in this middle area here because it allows so much depth to be defined, and ultimately it can set the tone for the rest of the piece itself. So let's actually start with the lip area here. And as you can see, I am an expert at naming my layers. So let's see. And we're just going ahead and get started. So we're going to find some deep colors, just something to kind of set the tone a little bit and start defining a little bit of these shadows here. Let's see. And what I'm doing differently than what's before is that I'm not worrying about being too perfect. So I'm not trying to fill in like the exact lines. I'm really just going over this essentially this shape area. And you can tighten up, a couple of areas here where if you don't want it to bleed out too much. But the idea is that I want to kind of create this mixture of strokes and textures that allow shape to come through. Because usually when you zoom in really close, it's very hard to define what's actually happening. But when you actually back up and you see it from afar, it starts to come together and really make sense. So you start to really see how it starts to define the different uh, body parts and just how light kind of connects with it as well.
That's looking so cool already. Yeah,
And
that
I have to give credit to you, Tom, just for defining the kind of some of the body parts where we have the donut mouth and the Cheeto eyebrows. I have not stopped saying that since
have you not?
since our
Oh,
last
I love to
conversation.
hear it.
I have not stopped saying that since our last session.
Yeah, that texture, that's super unique.
Absolutely. And one thing I love about these brushes is that it's not too strict. Obviously, you can set the opacity and the tone here on the left here, but it is forgiving. Like it doesn't allow you to kind of commit on the first stroke. You do have a little bit of leeway to kind of build up what you're really looking for. You see, some things I like to do is while I'm working in there, and if I ever don't want to go back, to my color palette here or my color collection here, I can always just use my finger. If you use one finger and hold down and tap, you can actually drag and find the color that you may want to use. So kind of makes it a little bit convenient when it comes to building out some of your assets. But even here, you can see like if we get close up, it's kind of random a little bit, right? It's almost like they're just piles of strokes of color and speckles all together. But as soon as we back up, we start to see that it starts to define a lot of that shape and pulls it together. And we're just going to continue to rinse and repeat um, that same technique all over. So let's actually start with our head here and begin doing that. And I actually bring this palette out a little bit more. But again, just having a little bit of fun, not being too strict on ourselves about what we're kind of placing here. The idea is just we want to have just values, right? We want to know that if there's a shadow there, we know that we need a darker color. You also want to look for colors that are complementary or supplementary, just to kind of make sure we're not over defining it when we don't really need to. And as you can see, I'm not trying to make this as precise. I just want to make sure I'm just picking up on the different areas where shadows may fall.
It's looking good.
But yeah, man, I was just saying, we're just going in and kind of just defining some of these values a little bit, where kind of some shadows will ultimately fall if we were defining this. But again, I know up close it looks a little bit all over the place, but it is allowing us to really define where light is coming in from and also where the shadows will fall because of that. And with these areas, it gets a little tricky, especially on the face, because you don't want it to look too much like a mustache or a beard. But you know,
I always struggle with that actually when I was doing portraits growing up.
mm,
If I was drawing a woman, I'd be trying to do cross hatching and apply shadow to the jaw, and it would just look like a 5 o'clock shadow instead of instead of like natural shading.
hmm yeah,
Never good with family
it's definitely a
members.
fine line.
Give your mum a beard or something.
Oh goodness. No, that is not a great Mother's Day present. So make sure you pay attention to your shadows. Absolutely.
How
No,
are
it's
you
definitely
finding
there's
this,
a
by
fine
the
line.
way? Like as a style, because I know normally you do kind of, what would you call it? Your normal brush, like not a half tone, but like a grain, and this is quite
Yes.
different. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's more of a grain brush. With this one, I think I've so when I first got into illustration early on, and this was back in I want to say this was back in college, and one of the first mediums that I had to learn was pastel. It was pastel, and I had a great professor that really showed how to look at light and how to define shapes when it comes to um, you know, creating depth and really getting a sense of like different planes that especially when you're on the face, because you have your shadows that's right under your eyebrows, your forehead, kind of your cheeks and things like that. All those are essentially shapes, right? So I credit him just kind of defining that for me. And I've always been a huge fan of that. It helped kind of looking at things a little bit differently. to be able to find different values, but not be so precise. Because always was a fan of how like very surreal illustrations, like just to be able to capture something to make it look even more real than a picture,
Yeah.
always blew my mind. And but I was never quote unquote skilled enough to really like do it or even just have the patience to really like define it. Um, but seeing how certain artists use pastels to define so much, but also have that complexity that you see when you zoom into it and you can't really tell what's going on, but when you zoom back out, you can see the whole picture. And I was a huge fan of that. Yeah, so it's kind of I wouldn't say where I started ultimately, but it was a medium that I learned early on, that really helped
Hmm.
kind of make doing things that are a little bit more detailed a lot easier.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah, that makes sense.
mhm.
Hank, would you mind just explaining where you're painting? Because we can't see your pencil tip, and I think there's a couple of community.
Okay, okay. Yes, so I'm actually wait, can you still hear me, Tim? I think your audio went out for a second. Make sure I still hear you. But as far as where I'm painting, I'm actually focusing on this area here. So I'll make a quick stroke just so you can kind of see. Actually, let me put a layer on top of this. That way everyone can see kind of where I am. So I'm actually focusing a lot on this area here, um, just because it has a lot of definition to show with the where lighting is. So I'm really focusing on here. So actually, I might do that the rest of the stream just so people can see where my brush strokes are. And again, I'm just kind of capturing a little bit of that backlight that's coming off. Hmm, that's starting to come together. And again, I love to focus on this middle area here. Let's see. I love to focus on this middle area here just because it allows so much definition. So I'm gonna actually move on to the neck area. And again, you can see here, I'm not necessarily doing any clipping masks or any blending modes or anything like that. Ideally, I'm just stacking color on top of each other just to start defining where shadows and things are falling. So, and when it comes to building up value, I don't want to go too deep into the darker colors first. Um, Usually, like if I'm starting with the yellow, I like to stack a lot of oranges and pinks on top just so it slowly builds up into that darker value. Um, and that way you have a lot of undertone colors that can kind of bleed through those darker ones. And it really gives you a lot of variety of colors. You can really see that buildup of how light is disappearing on top of the skin. So kind of a neat trick to, start to find shadows.
I love how abstract the colors are, Hank.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
It's like when you see
Oops.
old impressionist paintings, they'd use colors that
Hmm.
didn't appear to be in the actual subject matter, but when they combine, they create just an incredible overall composition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. Some of the early days in my when I was learning illustration, I had a professor, and I credit her to this day because she was very strict about some of the colors that we were actually able to use. And one thing she made clear was that we couldn't use the color black, like straight black in our illustrations. Because she always told us like if you want to get that color, you can actually combine colors that build up that value of black. just because it was so harsh and it was very direct. And sometimes we actually use black paper as kind of the foundation of it. Um, you know, she made us like literally say, hey, if you want to use black, you have to mix colors to make your own black color. Which at the time I thought that was insane. I was like, that's not something we need to do. But today it makes so much sense because even when you're building up, you know, certain looks, and especially if you're trying to find kind of this very soft style and kind of have it feel a little bit, I guess you say dreamy or sunsetish, you know, it's good to build up your own colors, like combine colors to make a color. And you start to really see that variety and flexibility, not only in the way that you're seeing it, but in the way that it's, you know, viewed. So this gives that kind
My
of
art teacher
illusion.
told me the same thing actually. So yeah, it was no using 100% black and no using 100%
Mhm.
white, because he
Yeah,
said it would just flatten a piece and it would appear unnatural because there was generally always other colors. You know, when you look at something in real life, it's never a black hole or like blinding white
absolutely.
light, right? It's experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a lesson I'll never take for granted for sure. So yeah, so that's actually starting to come together. So even if we zoom in super close, it almost looks like very random, like undefined anything. But now we zoom out and we can start to see a story being told. Nice.
Really
So
cool.
next here, I'm going to focus on this eye area. So I'm gonna give some circles for reference, just so we don't get lost. And just again, just utilizing the same technique, just really slowly building up those values and just being loose with this brush. So I don't want to feel confined and have to like stay within the lines or anything like that. And also you can tilt your pencil, as you can see, like if I turn it, it kind of changes the orientation of the brush. So you can kind of tilt your pencil to kind of fill in some of those spaces. Same with this side, again, not being confined to anything. And then we're just going to continue to build on top of that. So we got this purple base. We're actually going to add a complementary color, which is this orange, kind of fill in some of those other areas. Oops, a little bit too harsh.
Let us know in the live chat, everyone, as well. Are you following along okay? I can see some fantastic comments coming in. I think everyone's really enjoying it, Hank. But yeah,
That's
hopefully
awesome.
everyone's good with the pace and what they're learning.
Absolutely. If I'm going too fast, please say slow down. I promise it's okay. Absolutely. I think the next time I should practice this on your view tone. It feels like you got some of the best examples outside of your window. Yep. Yeah, you can see here getting a little sloppy, but that's 100% okay. I just want to fill in that space, and I can always go in and kind of a trick that I use is I use the same brush as my eraser, just so it still looks intentional, and I don't have any like too many like straight lines when I'm erasing. Like you just want something that kind of like takes away kind of the obvious in a sense. Gonna line this up just a little bit. And let's bring back that blue that we had. Just getting a little bit of that overlap where the eyelid comes over the eye. And just to soften it up just a little bit, we're going to use kind of our undertone color. And just kind of lightly go over it, just lightly.
I don't think I've seen anyone use these brushes or similar brushes in this way, Hank. Like they use them for texturing, but I haven't seen this build up of wildly different colors. It's really interesting to see, this whole technique.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, even in the examples in the pack, it's some beautiful examples, and I love how they make it look so seamless with the texture, and almost you can almost feel the skin tones of some of them. Um, but again, with this and just the flexibility with this pack, being able to just kind of use it loosely but still be able to tell a story, um, is what makes me a huge fan of it. So um, yeah, so let me add this. See if I can add a white in here. Can I? I guess not. It's okay. And so now we kind of have the base of the eye, and I'm just kind of going in and getting. Let me see. Let's make this kind of an off-white a little bit. Add a little bit of highlight itself. Again, not trying to be perfect. I just need to be enough to make it make sense. Now, up close, it looks like a lot, but if we back up, we can really see that eye come together. Now it looks like it has a lot more depth.
It's like iridescent almost.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And also as a note too, you can see with the shapes that we filled in, I used the same brush to basically fill in the shape. Again, just kind of using the same technique. I'm not really trying to make it perfect. And let me make a note here so you can see kind of what I mean. So you can see here it's not really perfect. Some of the edges are a little bit rough, and that's just so that when that color sits on top of it, or we add those values on top of it, it doesn't feel like it's going against like a very harsh edge, and you have this loose kind of brush on top of it. Because you can still see a line that'll kind of bleed through behind it. So, kind of a good trick if you want to emulate this style or this approach is to when you're filling in your shapes or like your foundational shapes, use your same brush. It doesn't. It's okay if it's like a little bit rough on the edges, but it's gonna come out a lot better when you're adding your values in top and you don't have like a clean edge on the bottom and then you have rough, layering on the top. Unless that's your taste, but preferably I'm the opposite. And oops, just name it. And also name your palettes and layers. Yep. So again, same technique that we're going to do here for the eyebrows. I'm actually going to distill this color from the hair. Just kind of build up a little bit of the highlight. And then we're going to start working on some of these other tones. A little bit deeper. Blue. Actually going to turn this opacity down. Let's take about 50 for this blue because it is kind of harsh. I see I'm not the only one that's kind of struggling with the name of the layers. I see someone said they got to organize their brushes. I 100% agree with that. I am in the same boat.
Relatable.
It's almost, like organized chaos. Like I know exactly where everything is, but outside looking in, you're not going to have a clue what's going on.
Yeah, Nita says it's looking great. I'm loving the technique. And Sharon says, I'm just amazed this brush is so versatile and that I've just been misusing it as just a texture device. You're inspiring people out
Absolutely.
here, Hank.
Hey, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. If we're not inspiring, what are we doing?
Exactly.
And kudos to you, man. I've been watching the community grow and everything else. So I'm super proud of your journey. I remember where, you started it, and now it's kind of grown to something amazing. So keep it going, man.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, that means a lot. I'm sure I've mentioned this before on these live sessions, but you know what it's like. You get so busy and swept up in kind of loving what you're doing and trying to build something that has a great impact. And
Mhm.
rarely do you stop and reflect on that. And so
Right.
our moment for doing that is normally when we have our Christmas party and the whole
Mm,
team is sat there and you kind of look at these amazing people that have come together because our team are incredible. And you just kind of sit back and think,
mhm.
wow, like, you know, we've collectively built this thing and everyone has a moment of reflection and pride, but that's always nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's well deserved, man. You've done a good job, and I keep up with it. I keep up with the workout regimens and get jealous. So I, s- I see it and I'm like, oh man, I gotta get in the gym. Okay, I gotta stop playing.
Can I just admit
Mm,
something, by the way? So
go ahead, go ahead.
I was starting to, you were talking about like layers and things. I was starting to lag
Hmm.
out a bit in the background. I've just closed nearly 200 browser tabs
Oh,
because it was actually killing my machine, and like now things are working again. So I apologize if I was lagging out a
oh no, no worries at all. I listen. You, if I had to admit something, you are not alone.
bit.
There are some days I'll be working, and then when I close out at the end of the day, I just realize I have like 100 Chrome tabs and like every Adobe program open for some reason. I'm not even working on anything in the programs. I just have them open.
And then we wonder why our machine is like overheating.
All right, we create a fuss at Apple. It's like, I don't know what's going on. Why is it not happening? It's like, sir, you're using like every bit of the machine, like like every piece of it at one time. So no shame in that, man. No shame in that. But summer is around the corner, man. Any plans for the summer? Any enjoyable festivities on the way?
So we're looking at like either a little getaway or maybe even a staycation.
Ooh, it's gonna be nice.
Because we don't know if we were going to get away or not. But if we do a staycation, we treat it like a vacation and do lots of
Mm,
restaurants and like no cooking and that kind of thing.
right.
Um, and yeah, I mean, really, like it's looking like a pretty amazing summer here in the UK, and so
Mhm.
I think often you don't want to go away when it's beautiful at home. But yeah, just
Absolutely.
seeing friends, trying to
Mhm.
enjoy it. How about you?
Pretty much the same. I think the goal this year is to be outside more. I think this past year has been a lot of um, a lot of working and which is good, but sometimes it's best to be able to step away and kind of enjoy the outdoors. And even if you still have to work, like work outdoors, for a little bit and
Hmm.
um, spend some more time with friends and family. And you know, I, I I'm born and raised from Mississippi here in the U.S. So the countryside and everything else is usually my natural habitat. So I really love being able to like be outside and kind of being like in the woods and or just out, whether it's like barbecuing or eating fish frying or fishing, something like that. So that's kind of where what I'm um, looking forward to this summer. So it's gonna be great.
That sounds beautiful. And I think more and more people are, realizing the positive impact of that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's free.
That's the
Like
And
I
it's
don't want to go
free.
on like too much of a crazy tangent, but anyone that used to listen to our podcast with the Honest Designers show, um, we've talked about balance and burnout, mental health, and all of these things
Mhm,
specifically with creatives in mind. And I think the
mhm,
power of like we got a dog last year, going for a walk every single
mm.
lunchtime and getting that sun and getting away from the desk. It's huge, and that stuff compounds as well.
It does. It does. Absolutely. No, it's 100% real, especially like you said, especially with creatives. But even if it's just a small amount a day, I think it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be a huge jump from where, you have to like do an hour workout every day or something like that. But even if it's just as small as, if you, walk back and forth to your mailbox every day, or, if you stay like in an apartment complex like I do, walking towards the front office, every now and then, and just having a little bit of you time
Hmm.
that, allows you to really, get some vitamin D from the sun, and then also being able to, uh, get the blood flowing, because we either sit down or we're standing up for a long time, and it gets tiring, you know.
It's true. My I don't know if you've seen on my Instagram, Hank, my favorite hack right now when we're having calls with the team or I'm trying to do some work, I'll take my laptop outside, um, but it gets too hot in the sun, so I put it in a laundry basket, so it's shaded, and so I'm sat there with a giant laundry basket on my on my knees with my laptop sheltered in it, just so I can get some fresh air and like get outside.
That's hilarious. I don't think I saw that, but I'm gonna go back and literally look for all those photos and like every single one of them for sure. That is so funny. I can't wait till we get, like almost like heat proof MacBooks, and then we literally can work
Yeah,
anywhere we feel comfortable.
that's the dream. If you're listening, Apple.
Yes, trust me, we are waiting. There is a need for it. I need everyone to go fill out an Apple survey and tell them prioritize making a a heat proof MacBook.
And you managed to waterproof your phone. So I'm looking for a laptop that I can, have underwater in the swimming pool. Get some work done there.
There you go.
That is that too much to
There
ask,
you go.
Apple?
I know. We're not asking for the world. We're just asking for you to redefine physics. That's all. Awesome. But as you see, we're making some good progress here. So again, I'm a huge fan of this kind of like controlled chaos in a sense. So being able to look at this very close up and seeing it almost look like just random shapes, and then being able to back up and see a whole story, um, it's always kind of has a special place in my heart specifically. So yeah, so
You,
we're cooking
you
with
know what's
gas.
really cool here, Hank? So when you show the whole character, it's an incredible piece of art. When you zoom in and you can't even tell what you're looking at, it still looks like an incredible piece of art. Like when you're zoomed in, that like I would have that on my wall, like just with the composition and the colors and the textures. Like that looks like a cool
Hmm.
piece of art to me.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate that. So, well, and that's also a hack for any artist out there that's selling prints. Like you can also do a detailed piece of work like this, and also crop it and sell it as a whole different piece.
100%.
For sure. I think that's another thing I'm actually looking forward to in the summer, is that a lot of more artists going to be outside and selling kind of their work, whether it's like, at local markets, um, certain venues and things like that. I think that's going to be, and it's going to be really exciting to see them back out and being able to support.
Yeah, agreed.
So right now, what I'm doing is I'm working on the hand here. So ideally, it does look like one whole like shape here, and I just kind of merged it. Like in the sketch, there are fingers essentially here, but I just merged it all to one. And we're just using the strokes from the brush and just using color to kind of define the values of the hands and how the fingers sit on top of each other. Because you can see like the top finger always would cast a shadow. Well, not the case in my example, but the top finger always casts a shadow down on the one that's under it. So we're just kind of adding strokes here to kind of give that darkness, um, and really start to see it come through. So if anyone's looking, it's kind of like, what is he drawing? Like, I promise you, it's coming together. Like, it'll make sense in a second.
I think at this point we all trust you, Hank.
I appreciate that.
You've taken some basic shapes and a whole crazy variety of colors and turned it into something beautiful. So we're with you.
Well, I thank you all for taking this journey. So sit back, relax, and I promise I'll get you there.
I don't know if you saw in the chat as well, but the Design Cuts community, they're always recommending you start like a meditation app with the soothing voice.
Yes. I'm still trying to
This happened last
trademark the
time.
name Hank Ross. Yeah,
Yeah.
it did. It did. I'm trying to trademark the name Hank Ross so I can replace Bob Ross when
Oh, I didn't know if
when
you
they
were
bring
kind of
back this show name.
fusing you and I there into one human.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, we're gonna make it a duo session.
Yeah, when we're hanging out at Creative South next year, Hank Ross,
Absolutely.
the duo.
Exactly. That's what we're gonna do. You're gonna be head of the community, and then I'll do the workshops.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be like the hype. I'll be the hype man. So I'll
There
have
you go.
none of the talent, but I'll get everyone like gathered around watching.
No, no, man, we're gonna do some collaboration sessions. That way we can get those creative juices flowing. All right, so again, still just kind of layering up some of these colors just to build some value. Again, not trying to be clean or anything of that sorts. Just needs just enough to tell that story. And in Creative South was it was really good, to see everybody just, Mike and the team and everything else. And you can kind of tell that, they was building it back up after, kind of keeping it on pause for the last couple of years. But, it was a really good family reunion and, seeing them, all of them make it back up and, continue to make it as fun as it always is. Um, it was definitely refreshing, man. It was kind of the
Hmm.
creative refresh that was needed. So I can't wait to, you and even some of the design cuts community, if they get a chance to make it out, I think it'll be worth the drive.
I don't know if you saw when Matt, our creative director, and I went a couple of years back, but we made a vlog about it. It's
Oh,
on
really?
YouTube still. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I saw that. Yeah, I gotta go check that out.
I mean, it was like 50% me drinking margaritas and running around meeting people. But, apart from that, that was some good stuff.
There you go. That sounds like entertainment to me.
Are you
No,
happy
I
if I
definitely
ask
gotta go
some
check that out.
community questions, by the way, Hank, as we go?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So Diane asks, have you been using the same brush the whole time or have you been switching?
I actually have been using the same brush. It's actually a great pickup because I didn't realize I was using the same brush the whole time. Yeah, I actually been using the same brush, but again, just because of how loose it is. So specifically, it's the Particle Dash Edge Pro Dense.
Mhm.
It has a really good setup to it. I didn't have to tweak it or anything. I kind of just used it as is. But really great brush. It, as you can tell, it builds up a lot of values. But if I were to use the other one that we're focusing on, which is the Essential Pastel brush, it has a little bit of a slower buildup, and obviously I like to tweak the pastel just so it doesn't get too harsh quick. But I can slowly build certain things up, and I think this is
Yeah, I
really
can see
good
it.
if you want to merge colors. Yeah,
Hmm.
if you want to
Awesome.
merge colors and kind of get some outside. So yeah, two really great
Uh,
brushes, but the whole set is awesome.
yeah, I mean, and you're already showing, I think, what it's capable of. Sharon asks, Hank, do you group your palette by value or color?
Ooh, that's a really great question. Um, hmm, that's a really good question. I think it's really more value. I think It's really both, but I think I start with value first and then tweak it to actually, become more about the color. So you see a lot of these are very complementary. So we have kind of the orange and blues is together, a little bit of the green and purples as well, just to kind of make sure that there's a highlight in the shadow as well. And again, just using the background, this core color, this kind of soft yellow, as a kind of a trigger for the highlights. And obviously kind of using this off white, but I do start with values and then I tweak the values more around the color secondary. But really, really
Awesome.
great question though.
And we have another color-based question from Nita. You kind of just covered this, but she's saying, how do you actually decide on the color palette? So I understand you're picking,
Mhm,
secondary colors and highlights and so on, but are you doing
mhm.
this by eye to start with the foundation? Are you sampling it from somewhere? Like, is there a mood board?
I'm actually doing it by eye. So even coming up with this concept, there is kind of this kind of boundary that I do set to where, like, with it being kind of this summer theme, I do want it to feel as though, like what does it look like in that aspect of summer? So like maybe it's like a summer evening or things like that, and just think about colors that feels like that. There are references that you can pull, like even if you go on to like any photo site where you can kind of pull kind of different aspects of summer, whether it's you know, pictures of people outside, or maybe it's like a, sunset or a sunrise type thing. Just keep those in mind. I think just from my work experience, I usually can picture those like scenes in my head a little bit, which kind of dictates a little bit of the color choice. Um, but ultimately, it's a little bit of it's a little bit more just kind of just picking it from my eye and kind of the sense of the feel that I want.
Mm.
Because usually if I want to use a picture, it'll get really close, but it never hits the mark exactly where I want it. So sometimes I have to kind of just like, all right, this color feels right, and just continue to tweak the values. And there's plenty of sources out there that do a really good job of helping you kind of, do that. So another great question, but yes, mostly through my eye and
Fine.
just kind of pulling what I feel
And
feels
and
right.
that takes time, right? I doubt you were
It does.
a master at picking colors on day one, but you refine it over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anne says, can't wait till Hank gets to the hair. I'm excited for that as well.
Absolutely. No, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go there next. Actually, I think I want to make sure I'm aware on time and make sure we're good. These are some really great questions. Like these are things I
Are you,
actually never thought about like answering.
are you happy if I keep throwing questions at you? I don't want to
Go
throw
ahead.
you
No,
off
go
your
ahead.
rhythm.
No, go
Cool.
ahead. I'm
So,
fine.
um, Charlotte was just asking about your layer structure, like for the brush use in particular. Are you doing different layers for each section, or are you doing all the brush work on one layer?
So I'm doing it all on one layer. Here. Typically, what I would do is I would separate kind of what I'll do as a base for the shadows, and then another layer on top specifically for the highlights, just because the highlights can, depending on your settings, your highlights can bleed into some of your shadows and kind of look a little mushy.
Hmm.
But for the sake of this session here, I am using all on one layer, but that's because this brush has a lot of looseness to it. So it does allow me to kind of put the highlights in those gaps because it doesn't really fill in the area all the way, but I can actually squeeze highlights in the gaps. And obviously, when we look from it from afar, it looks all kind of like together. Um, but in other cases, if I'm using more of that speckle and grain brush, like before, I usually will separate those layers from the shadows and the highlights specifically. But
Hmm.
um, again, another great question. But this session, I'm putting it all on one just because we have a lot of elbow room to not be perfect.
That makes sense. And this is
Mhm.
not a question, but Britt says Hank is one of the dopest illustrators,
Oh man,
and I would agree.
making me making me blush. Don't make me blush. I really appreciate that. I try my best out here.
I feel like this character has just gone through like a weight loss transformation if you look at the waistband.
There you go. You know, they worked out in the wintertime, and now it's time to kind of splurge a little bit in the summer.
My old personal trainer always used to have the cheesiest saying. He was like, "Summer bodies are made in winter," and you're there freezing and not wanting to go to the gym. Like, I hate
Right. That's so true. Yeah, that's usually sometimes the best time to go is when you really, I mean, 100% don't even feel like it,
you.
and it's just like, oh goodness.
Alexis
Cool.
asks, would you use the smudge tool using the same brush?
Would I use the smudge tool?
Yeah, like using the pastel brush.
Hmm. Um, well, if I would use it, I think so. It'll be kind of like an experiment type thing to try it out. I typically won't with just this case just because I want to make sure like it's kind of layered and almost like caking a little bit on top of each other. Um, 'Cause I think the smudge tool would be really nice when you're really defining like, you know, transitions of depth where like, if you're coming from a dark area to a light area and you really want to capture that mid-tone. I
Mhm.
think that's when the smudge tool really comes in clutch. But typically, no, I wouldn't use it, but I'm definitely not against it. I think it's something that could be really interesting actually to see. I'm actually might try that on the next my next illustration, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. By the way, just a reminder, everyone with us, all the design cutters today, if you have not checked out the community hub, it's a pretty special place. We got design cutters in there every single day sharing their work, and there's such an incredible variety of work in there. It's always so nice to see what design cutters are making, and often people will say, "Oh, this is using like the new brush set from Nathan or whatever it might be." So it's kind of great to see
Mm,
the assets here at Design Cuts being turned into incredible works of art and compositions. So if you do follow
absolutely.
along with this workshop, we would love to see your version of this beautiful fuzzy and what you're learning about shading and color theory and so on. Share it in the hub. We would love to, leave some feedback and check your work out.
100%.
And Hank, no obligation here at all. But one community member, Diane, said, "Would you potentially be willing to share the basic shapes or line art in the hub for people to then download and kind of trace over and follow along with this workshop?"
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, well, I can do that because I definitely have the sketch saved here, and then I think if yeah, if anyone wants to try it out and obviously use this as a reference to do this, 100%, man.
Really kind.
I should be flattered.
Well, if you need any help with that, the team can point you in the right direction, Hank.
100%. Absolutely. I think someone was really eager about the hair, so I wanted to skip ahead and kind of work on this a little bit, but um what I'm doing now is essentially right now what I've done to the hair is giving it a little bit of a roundness on the edges, like kind of this puffy look. And what I'm doing is just going into those creases where kind of you see this curve kind of goes around here. I'm actually just aiming for these little parts here just to kind of give it a little bit more definition. So almost you can see like there's a pile of hair sitting on top of another pile of hair. Um, so yeah, I'm just going in and kind of just adding a little bit of strokes, and you can see the orientation of the brush because I have the screen sitting straight up and I'm kind of using my pencil like directly head on. It's giving this little bit of a curve and kind of this sharp edge here. So just kind of just utilizing that to build up some of these sections. And again, I'm not trying to be perfect, but I'm just doing enough to tell that story. Um, define it just a little bit more with this kind of this darker green. A little bit down here. And then we'll follow it with like a dark purple. Yeah, I would love to see what everyone comes up with, kind of utilizing this technique and things like that. And if you share it online, make sure to tag me. I'd love to share it and repost it and see you guys' progress.
100%. And if the team can reshare Hank's social channels, that would be awesome. Just so people know where to tag him. You know what's always cool, Hank? Like when people share their version of what they create following these workshops each week, everyone's is slightly different. So they're never carbon copies. Like people are so creative, they put their own spin on them.
Absolutely. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, although I think it speaks to creative people, right? We never just want to copy something exactly. We get inspired by it and we try and make it our own.
Exactly. And I think that that journey of learning it, obviously there is a little bit of kind of, step and repeat type things, but you know, essentially not everyone is going to see or hear the technique the same way. Which ultimately will, like you said, lead them to kind of define their own approach to it, which usually ends up as a result of someone making something super unique. So yeah, I'm excited to see what everyone comes up with. I think that's going to be super interesting to see. So now you can see in the hair, I'm just going around and just kind of layering kind of what I'm seeing as highlights and kind of what I feel gives it a little bit more definition. Like I'm usually working dark to light just so that even, again, like we talked about earlier, where, stacking layers, even if you're using the same, if you decide to use the same layer, um, I think it's a lot better to go from dark to light when it comes to like defining your shadows than highlights. So that way your light sits on top of that. And it doesn't get lost if you ever need to go back and redefine your shadows. And even with this technique, I'm not necessarily putting a lot of colors like directly on top of each other, where it's almost like blending and getting lost. I'm kind of just creating marks in the areas that they usually will be found. Obviously, that's not the case here, but you can see it's not a lot of blending around here just because of this specific technique. Now, if you decide to blend, that's 100% okay. I think it actually may create something, really unique. But again, for the sake of this, tutorial here, I'm just kind of stacking, if that makes sense. But as we back up, we can actually see how the hair starts to come together. And let me see. Now you can't really see them, but we do have eyebrows here. The famous Cheeto eyebrows, as Tom would call it.
I love that stuff.
And so so we're gonna define it here. So let me put on our focus area just to make sure everyone can kind of see. So we're gonna go in and just kind of like slowly build this up. I know it's very hard to see. So if you're doing this and you have your eyebrows defined, and you can't see them, you can simply just hold down the layer. So where I have the layer selected, if you hold down the checkbox, it'll isolate that actual layer and hide everything else. So then you can actually go in and define it. Yeah. But for this sake, I'm gonna kind of eyeball it a little bit, and we're gonna see how loose we can be. not being clean at all. Just applying strokes and kind of let the color speak for itself just a little bit. And maybe we define one more color right here in the bottom, just so it has a little bit more of an edge. Sometimes the tricky part with doing things like this, sometimes you forget your color combinations. You kind of have to mix it up
Mhm.
every time you go to a new area. So don't feel pressure to have to follow it exactly. Just try to remember, you know, roughly kind of what you've done, and I promise it'll come out close enough.
Yeah, that's what I love about your whole technique. It doesn't feel constraining. It feels quite freeing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really believe in like when you're drawing, like especially when it's you kind of drawing for the pleasure of what you're doing. um you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. I think there's obviously techniques that people prefer, which that's 100% okay. But me personally, I don't want to feel constrained um with the pressure of like having to be like on the mark, especially when it's for strictly for enjoyment. So kind of what we're going to focus on here. Oops, it's a little bit too close. And I'll try to thin this out just a little bit. Then let's add a little bit of an edge here. As you can see, if you ever just feel a little bit lazy and you don't want to go back and forth from your color palette, feel free to just use what you already have on screen and just hold down your finger and just drag to find kind of the color that you want. So actually it might be another neat technique for anyone who's like kind of struggling to get the exact color combination they may have done in one area. So,
Mhm.
but look at that. Close up, can barely tell what's going on, but now you can see a whole figure.
That's like an amazing thing.
Awesome. So yeah, so we're gonna continue to move on, and we're gonna work on this popsicle. And
I I got a
let's see.
question from Sharon actually. Um, she
Okay.
asks, do you plan your shadows and highlights ahead, or do you kind of wing it as you go?
Uh, I kind of hate to admit it, but I actually wing it. It's you don't know if that's a great thing to admit, but yeah, I usually just wing it. I tend to just go ahead and define a light source usually when I get started. And I think the with this technique, it doesn't allow me, like we said before, it doesn't force me to be so precise. So even if like I start somewhere and it's not perfect or it messes up a little bit, it's okay. Like, I'm able to, kind of shift and make different decisions, or even again just stack, just to almost make it feel a little bit intentional with some of the places. So um I appreciate you for making me admit the truth. I did not I did not plan out a lot of this, but obviously in different cases, if it's, if it's commissioned work and things like that, it's a little bit more, planned out.
Mhm.
Going in, just kind of defining a little bit of this popsicle here. Oops. All right, and refine this a little bit. I'm gonna add kind of this off-white here to give it almost a sense of kind of the ice, a little bit of the ice that's on it. All right. Yeah, it's gonna be great to get back outside and enjoy some frozen treats.
Have you got a favorite? Although I'm sure I probably wouldn't recognize any of them. We probably don't have them here in the UK.
um, man, favorites. I don't know. It's so hard. It's so hard to commit to one. It's a lot, man.
All
It's one.
right,
It's one that I haven't.
mhm.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Sorry. Go ahead, Hank.
Um, it's one I actually haven't had in a long time, and I'll actually be really surprised if the UK has this. But they're push-ups. They're like this little orange push-up thing. You have to like, it's I can't even describe it. It looks like a popsicle, but it's like a plastic carton, and it has like a stick at the bottom of it, and you have to tear off the foil on the top, and you have to push it up, and it's almost like an orange like sherbet type thing. I haven't had one in a
Okay.
very long time, but it's delicious. It's probably I'd say that's probably one of my top favorite.
And my follow-up question was going to be, oh, Diane says creamsicles. Is that right? Does that sound familiar?
Creamsicles. I think I've heard of them,
Um,
but that sounds delicious too.
what's your Fran read my mind in the chat. Yeah, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, ice cream. I'm a butter pecan type of guy. Butter pecan
Mm,
is probably my
oh,
favorite.
that
Yeah,
sounds
I
good.
think butter
I've
pecan's
never
number
had
one,
that.
and cookies cream. What? Oh man. Okay, I'm gonna get you some. Now you gotta come to South so I can get you
Yeah.
some butter pecan ice cream. No man, it's delicious. It has like little pecans in it, um, and it's gonna have this like buttercream, a little bit of a buttercream flavor, mixed in with it as well. So it's delicious. So I think you'll really like it a lot. I think that and cookies and cream or like an Oreo is probably my like follow up,
Hmm.
and that's only if I can't get the butter pecan.
So I can see two community members share my favorite, which is caramel.
Ooh, nice.
That's pretty nice as well. Or
Someone said
like a,
coconut pineapple.
I
That
saw
sounds
that.
delicious.
Never had that. That sounds amazing. I like coffee as well.
Oh yeah, coffee is a good flavor. Yep, really good flavor. Yes, I think that's gonna be something very exciting to look forward to.
Yeah, this is
All right.
making me making me crave some icy treats. That looks so
Absolutely.
cool. That hair looks amazing. Damn, it looks like it was made in
Absolutely.
3D software.
That's a lot of people ask about that. They always ask if these are 3D characters, and
Mhm.
so I'm like, no, they're not. They're simply just 2D with a lot of layers on top of them. But
That's
anyway,
incredible. What it is as well, with some of these shapes, you've captured, like, the light spectrum. So it looks like where you see
mm,
a bubble and the light is refracting.
hmm.
I don't know if that was
Absolutely.
intentional, but yeah, looks so good.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of other artists and just kind of studying like what they how they think about light, and obviously in kind of in a real, and it's never just like light and dark. It's always like light, there's a mid-tone, there's a dark, and then there's like a little bit of like a I guess you can go back to a mid-tone or the other side of that really defines it. And uh that technique was always unique to me. And even with the fuzzies, I it tends to be a little bit flat, but when you add that extra like layer or that extra stroke of light on the edge of that darkness, it really pulls it all together versus it being kind of like left to right. It almost looks like it's left and around than to
Mhm.
right. Um, yeah, so these are it's fun bringing these characters to life. So, oops, a little bit too harsh. Yep, and I think the again, just the most important thing is just you just gotta have fun with this. Like you know, I always think back of like how unique it is to be able to do this as, kind of whether it's a hobby or even as a job or as a career type thing. It's a very unique, place and time to be able to have this as a way of living. So,
Mhm.
never want to take that for granted, and, you know, continue to appreciate the people who shown the way, the people who are celebrating the way, aka design cuts. And um
AKA you, my friend. You're blazing that trail.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just I always want to make sure I never forget that, and it just makes the journey a little bit more sweet, pun
Well
intended.
said. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, just kind of defining the arms. And I will say, sometimes doing kind of really sometimes the arms is really the hardest part, just because it's so, elongated, and you want to kind of touch on certain things. And sometimes with these brushes, they don't carry the stroke far enough as you would like. Um, so this kind of gets a little tricky, but again, we just want to stay loose as we can, and um, allow it to build itself out.
That looks great as well. That looks like a colored pencil. So you got
Absolutely.
like the pastels and the colored pencils. So now it's feeling like a mixed media type thing.
Absolutely.
I think we got a few more minutes, by the way. I know we're over time, but this was too good. Like there was no way I wanted to cut you short. I had to see this incredible work of art come together.
Ah, I, I definitely appreciate you and everybody hanging out to watch me do this. This was fun. When I saw the pack, immediately on there, I knew that's exactly where I wanted to go with this. So No, it's exciting to be able to see this kind of come to life.
Yeah, I'm liking some of the new direction. It's the Hank that we all know and love, but pushing those creative boundaries.
Trying our best. Trying our best.